processes, and we're focusing strictly on these 4 key areas on the screen right now. So as I was mentioning, reason codes will be the first area we go through, and that's kind of going through when you edit a time card, you have different reasons. You have to figure out what reason it correlates to the change I am making or the edit I'm making. So we'll go through that. We'll go through the discussion on audit trails, and audit trails being general process of, everything you do is tracked in the system. So we're going to go through how you can benefit and how you can use those audit trails to your advantage. And then we'll go through time allocations, and allocations is just basically, where do you want to charge the time? Where do you want to put time that the employees have worked, and or maybe you yourself, and reallocate it amongst a job, a work order, a specific task, or even the rate type. And then lastly, we'll go through a little section on mass PTO upload. Now, many of you have used this in the past, but this is kind of a piece where you can actually upload time for all of your employees who may not have worked a specific day, and maybe a holiday, and we need to still pay them for holiday pay. So instead of going and doing it each one by one manually, we have the ability to go and do it in mass. So we're going to talk about that function as well. So 4 key areas as part of the time card processes. The first area we'll go through today is the reason code and the purpose of the reason codes. Now, as everyone is well aware, is when you go into your time card view and you make any edits to the time card, you are always prompted with a reason code dropdown. And that reason code gives an ability to go in there and note why exactly we're making that particular change. Now, that reason code does get audited. It does go to the audit trail, which I'll talk about a little later in this call. But the reason code is a key component of editing a time card. So as you are aware, that any and all changes in the time card module are requiring a selection of a reason from the reason code list. Now, there are quite a few different reason codes, and I'm going to display all these momentarily. But the bottom line is the user cannot simply go in there and type in a reason. You have to go and pick one off the drop-down list. And when you pick one off the drop-down list, this change is going to be required to better report and better account when it comes to audit time, and kind of just provide you a path to the forthcoming attendance policy tracker. Now, one of the things I will address to you is we are going to be upgrading Blueforce later this year in the fall, and during that fall time period, there are a lot of new features and functionalities that will be helpful to you going forward with Blueforce. Now, one of those functions is called the attendance policy tracker. It's almost like a 3 strikes kind of scenario for many of you live in states where you have a point system that you can, every time you get pulled over or have a violation of your driving record, you get a point. Well, like for example, I was in California, and here in Texas, here you have a 3 points. You are basically get a suspension or some type of some type of a driver's license revocation, maybe you can say. But bottom line, sort of along those lines, we have a attendance policy tracker that will be unveiled later this year, possibly into early next year, and kind of going through that, kind of help you with your employees clocking in, clocking out, making sure all that is done correctly. So we'll talk about that more forthcoming. But the reason code is a big thing, just to basically track and kind of keep better accounts accountability when it comes to audit time. Now, the reason codes are always done on the editing the time card piece. So as always, when you go to the time cards module, the time cards module is the screen I show here, and you go down and click on one of the actual, select one of the actual time card lines. For example, the number 2 is pointing right now to the little checkbox there. When I hit that little checkbox and then go to number 3, which is edit the selected time card, and I have the ability to go edit that timeline. So for Jane Doe there, that's currently selected, who's clocked into job 100, my main office, I can then now go and edit selected time cards to actually see the detail on that particular time card. Now on the time card view here, I can then go down, fill in all the missing pieces. More than likely, if you're editing a time card, it's because someone missed a punch. They forgot to punch in, they forgot to punch out. That's typically the case where you're going to edit a time card. Occasionally, you can go in there and edit a time card to change a task, maybe a job, maybe even a work order. But in any of those cases, the last field is a reason code, and that is required. You cannot go through and save your changes and actually update the time card unless you enter a valid reason code. Now, the reason codes on this list here are shown here. You'll see quite a few different ones. And what I'm going to do for you today is I'm going to go through these reason codes, and I kind of explain the purpose or kind of the mentality behind when to use these particular codes. Now, right off the bat, I'll tell you that if you look at the first couple of one, the first one says add manual jobs, job hours. That should be self-explanatory. If it's a job that is a manual job, you'll have to use that particular reason code. I'll give you a full definition momentarily. The next four are all related as they all start with add miss punch. The next two talk about correct codes, correct hours. And the ones down below are kind of grouped as well by the enters and then the notates and then a zero time card obviously at the very bottom. But bottom line, I should go through here. The different reason codes that are available to you are as follows. The very first one, add manual job hours. This one is basically straight up, very simple to understand. This is basically a setup where an employee cannot punch in and out because there's no time collection device system available. Now, essentially what that basically means is this is a job that has been deemed, for example, maybe a low margin job or a situation where the costs outweigh the number of employees or the usage there at the job site. But these jobs are considered manual jobs where we totally expect time to be entered manually. Now, I will guarantee you that right now around the company, that list is very, very short. We don't have that many manual jobs. It's just a handful. And these are because maybe they're in the middle of nowhere. Maybe they're at a place where we cannot put in a time collection device on any of the four methods. Or bottom line, they're low margin jobs. So in those cases, those are manual job hours. And that's the only time we go in there and use that reason code is when we actually have a manual job. The next couple ones are add miss punches because of different reasons. The first one is the employee fault. Employee fault basically says the employee forgets to punch in or out. The Blueforce user will then add the start and end time in Blueforce. Miss punch, same thing. The employee cannot punch in or out due to a time collection system being unavailable. For example, the Walter is down or not working. In that case, the Blueforce user, which is all of us on this phone call, will then go and add the start or end time into Blueforce. Miss punch for a new employee. Well, that essentially is basically telling you that an employee has started to work for some reason or another. Maybe that person has not completed the hiring process, but the hours need to be added in the system. So those days while he or she is working and not yet available in Blueforce, you can still go in the system and key in their hours using add miss punch new employee. Add miss punch work related. So in some cases, maybe an employee is asked to run an errand or maybe some type of task, but is unable to return to the actual time collection device to actually record that out punch. So they're currently clocked in, but for whatever reason they've been sent out to do an errand, they cannot clock out. In those cases, a situation where it may be more feasible for an employee just to go home instead of come back to the job site and then go back out. And then supervisor can go in there, mark it as a miss punch work related, and then he or she can go in there and add that time into the system with this reason code. The last two on the list here are correct codes and correct hours. Correct codes allows you to go in there and change a job number, add a work order, alter the rate type. In any of those cases, you're not messing with the employee's time. So those are actual situations where it's not going to count against you from a standpoint of manual punches or time changes. It will count against you from the point of correction lag if you wait too long to make these changes. So one of the things I talked about roughly over a month ago on the correction change webinar was, that we need to make sure we correct codes sooner rather than later. So that's the option for correct codes. Now, correct hours. If you ever have to go in there and change hours because an employee's punch time, it means you add or change a meal break. If it affects the employee's time, then you want to go ahead and note it as correct hours as the possible reason code here. So this is the first half of the list. The second half continues where we have a couple of unique situations. Now let me go back one page. I would tell you that most of you will use these particular punch reason codes. These 7 on the list are the ones you're going to be using on a regular basis. I will guarantee you that the next set of codes you may or may never use, just depending on your scenario. Now, many of you actually have used the next few reason codes, but we have 5 more. Let's see here. There we go. Six more, sorry. And these are actual codes that we've created for certain scenarios, because obviously, for example, the first one, enter paid absence. If you ever want to go in there and use the system more to your advantage, where you want to go and track scenarios where someone was supposed to work but simply did not work, but they are due paid absence, you can actually go in there, key in time, and use the reason code of paid absence. Same thing with the enter unpaid absence. Maybe they were they called out today, or they asked off a week ago for a day. Well, you can go in there and enter an unpaid absence authorized, meaning that the Blueforce user, supervisor, whomever, went ahead and authorized the absence. It was basically a approved absence, but we just want to go in there and track it in the system. For example, the employee's taking a planned vacation, or the employee has a doctor's visit today, or whatever it may be. You can actually go in there and enter as paid absence. Now, once again, these are reason codes or reasons for scenarios where you typically don't currently use it for. And I know some of our IFS teams actually use these codes all the time. So that is also a good opportunity to use enter unpaid absence authorized. Now, the reverse side of that is unpaid absence unapproved, meaning that someone actually just doesn't show up for work. They called in the last minute. For whatever reason, it's an unapproved absence. But once again, you want to track those unapproved scenarios. So you can actually go in there and track an unapproved absence. In all these cases, you could go in there and key in the shift times into the system, and then just go ahead and note it as a unpaid absence authorized, or unpaid absence unapproved. So that's always an option for you to keep in mind, that these reason codes can be used for a little bit broader area other than just the a typical mispunch kind of scenarios that we're tend to do on a day-to-day basis. A couple other ones here: notate early, late punch authorized. What that basically says is at ISS direction, the employee started before their scheduled start time or worked past their scheduled end time. The employee can come in, maybe ask to come in early, and maybe go and relieve another employee. So in cases like that, maybe the employee is there an hour early, and you say, you know what, go ahead and punch in. I need you to go ahead and help me, or go ahead and start work early today. In those cases, instead of going there and messing with the time changes and stuff like that we've always accustomed to do after the fact, the employee punches in. We then go in there and just notate it on the reason code. If you like, go to that punch and just put a reason code in as a notate early, late punch authorized. And one thing that we'll note is that as far as the time card goes, if you go into the edit time card method, go and click on edit time card, at any point you can go in there and just add a reason code. You don't have to make a change. You don't have to do anything. If I just want to go in there and put a reason code in there, maybe just to note for your own record that this is the day I told Joe to come in early, I can go in there and just notate it, put the option notate early, authorized. Just put that in the system. That way I know that exactly was the reason I did. And once again, this also goes back to the audit trail. It does show up on the audit trail. It allows you to explain later down the road if someone would ever question you as to, why is this person clocking in an hour early on these days? Oh, it was notated that John allowed him to punch in early on these particular days. Same thing on the other side. The employee started either after their scheduled start time or left early before the scheduled end time. You can go in there and put notate early, late punch unapproved. This is a little opposite. You didn't approve it, they just ended up showing up late, or they left early without any approval. The last one is the big one, because sometimes we go in there and zero out time cards. Now, typically we have an option on the Blueforce time card grid that's called zero out time card. In some cases, many of you have gone in there and actually tried to zero it out straight on the actual time card itself. Now, that's not the best way to do it, because that can cause other issues. But we create the zero out time card option just more so to go in there and note the mistaken double punches. So in those scenarios, you can use that drop down and pick a zero time card reason code. Now, we'll say I want to put a little note there that I put there as an IntelliPunch update for Walter time clocks. What I mean by that is, for those that have Walter time clocks, over the next couple of weeks, you'll be getting an email from me and letting you know that we're going to be upgrading or updating the functionality on your clocks. And what that is actually going to do is going to actually give the clock a more intelligent punching system in which it actually knows what the next step or phase for that employee is. So for example, if I go to a clock this morning and punch in, and then I start thinking, all right, well, did I ever punch in? Did I actually do that right? Did I forget that? You know, you saw those questions start coming through. At the end of the shift, when I go back to that clock, I go in there and get ready to punch out for the day. The system's going to actually remind you. The system's actually going to show you on the screen what your next move should be, or the employee's next move should be. So there's never a question, because obviously sometimes an employee, always happens all the time, employees trying to punch out, they're carrying a conversation with other employees, they're not paying attention what the screen says, they're just going and punching numbers on the screen, and it says it punches them out. So they go back to the clock and they go back and punch out a second time because they don't remember what we call it, they punched out the first time. So in those cases, the system's actually going to remember what the last move the employee did and prompt them as to what their next step should be. So in those cases, if it's a punch in, it'll tell them punch in on the clock. It'll be just one single green button in the middle of the screen. They're going to tap that or hit the number 1 on the keypad. And next time they go to the clock, it'll give them the next option, which then will be the clock out. Or if they're using lunch, going and punching in and punching out for lunches, it'll give them the options for lunches. So a lot of those things will be activated automatically for you via this IntelliPunch. So more to that in the coming weeks. All right, so that's the reason code section. Now that kind of leads us right into our next Timecard process, which is the audit trail. Now the audit trail, as I mentioned earlier, the audit trail is an option where, well, it's not really an option, it's actually a system process that is always running that kind of dictates what has happened with that employee's record. So essentially an audit trail by definition is a sequence of timecard entries that validates or invalidates the employee's final timesheet. So it shows in chronological order when time punches have occurred, where the time punches have originated, and notes on any subsequent manual changes. One thing that Audit Trail always does for you, it also tells you who made that change. So if I were to go in there right now and alter any employee's time card, if you went back to that Audit Trail for that particular time card, you'll be able to see any change that I made. It'll tag my name, it'll tag the time, it'll tag exactly what occurred. All that information is going to be there for you. So now that you have this Audit Trail, what's the value to you? Well, for example, the value there is going to give you the ability to prevent and catch any fraud. Now, if you have a lot of hands in the cookie jar, you know how tempting it can be to go in there and mess around the employee's time. You know, give this guy extra 10 minutes because he's always there for you when you need him, or you go in there and add him an extra vacation day here and there because he's covered for you the last couple nights. Stuff like that nature. It's always going to be logged there as far as the audit trail is concerned. That also helps ensure that the employee gets paid correctly for all the hours worked. So essentially, you go in there and be able to see all the information for that particular employee. So if any employee is missing hours or if someone reduced hours, you'll have that noted in the system as well. Also tracks any concerns you may have when dealing with compliance scoring. If you're going in there and you have a low score on time changes, you can go in there and see anytime an employee has had a time change, you can go in there and question it. Anytime a manual punch has been entered, you can go in there and question it. But once again, the audit trail is always active, it's always live, up to date. You go in there and get that information at any point. So in cases like this, for example, this is just a view of the time card view. As you go through here, I have different colors, different things going on the screen. If you ever see anything that's in yellow, anywhere in the system, that is considered a manually inputted or manually generated punch. Now, the yellow color coding is letting you know that someone went in there and entered that punch. Now, they could have entered it straight up manually. For example, in this one, I may have gone in there and entered a 2158 punch to a 2258 out punch for Jesus Ramirez at Chase Center garage staff. I could have done that. But also the yellow punches do get created whenever you do a manual split, which we'll talk about a little later in our call. But when you do that split function, it automatically creates yellow punches. The yellows are just letting you know those are punches that are not system generated. I mean, the system didn't, I mean, the employee generated. The employee didn't go in there and punch in and out for those punches. The orange punches are always going to let you know whenever a change has been made to that time, whether it be a manually entered time initially or whether it be an employee generated time initially, some change has occurred. So the oranges should be should be eye-catching immediately, that you go straight to those and find out, you know, why is time being changed? Why is a punch changed here? What's going on? So the oranges allow you to see that information as well. Now, one thing I will note to everyone's attention here, when you're in the actual time card view, at the very top left-hand corner of the grid, you always have this little link called Timecard Legend. Timecard Legend here allows you to go in there and see all the variety of different color codings that you may see on this particular screen at any point in time. So if you're ever wondering what a color that means, says, does, and all that good stuff, click on Timecard Legend, a little pop-up window appears, and you have all the breakdown there for you. Now the greens here on the screen, I just mentioned real quick, the greens are just your phone-in punches. So those that use phone-in, those are good things, those are good greens, so you don't worry about that. Green's good. That's letting you know that those punches were captured via phone-in. So to access the actual audit trail, over on the left-hand side of the screen, you do see on the left-hand side of the grid, you do have all these view details, straight down the list, down on the left-hand column of your grid. Now, whenever I go in here and actually click on that little black arrow that's right to the right side of that view details button, I can click on that little black arrow, and that black arrow is going to give me a pop-up menu. And this pop-up menu will then allow you to then pick a couple options. One of the options there in the middle is called View Audit. Now, the View Audit option now allows you to go in there and see the audit trail behind that punch. Now, if the employee has just punched in and the employee's punched out, you're probably not going to see anything other than what you see at the bottom part of the screen. You're going to see two green punches looking good because he clocked in on phone in at 23:32. He clocked out on phone in as well at 5:39 a.m. So in all, the system calculates that time and then provides you a nice total for that employee. So these are the actual punches that the employee actually recorded on themselves. Now, when you see an option on the far right-hand side that says New Time Card Added, you actually will typically see that as being the first line of a brand new created punch. Now, there is actually a column, and I kind of preserve the names of the innocent here, or the guilty, I guess I should say. But right in here is the last modified by. If the employee is clocking in and out on their own, this last modified by is blank. Now, the second line you'll notice is there has been a change made, and that change is notated in orange there. This change now, you notice that he clocked out at 5:39, but someone changed his punch to 5:32. Well, by that occurring, there is going to be a last modified by name right in that field. Right now it's blocked out. I purposely covered it up. But from that, you'll also actually note as to what occurred. So you will know that the timeout was changed. So that right now lets you know that a time change has occurred and is noted in the system. If you go back to this employee's punch on the time card, it's going to look just like it looks there on that particular line. You're going to have a green in punch and an orange out punch. The orange designating that a change was made to the original punch. Okay, so the view audit is nothing more than a trail of all the different situations where an employee, punched in, punched out, and something was changed. And anything was changed on the time card records is going to be noted here on the audit trail. Another example is this one. This one's a little bit more in depth. So this particular example, I have a lot of employees punching in and punching out. And actually, what I did here is the first particular entry at the very bottom, and it always starts from the bottom up. But the very first one shows that I created a new time card for this employee. My name is right here. I created a new time card, and I actually shows yellows, which means I actually manually create this time card. I put an in punch of 8. out punch of 1600, which means an 8-hour day for this employee manually entered. It actually even tells me that the reason I noted this manual punch is because we added this miss punch is because it's the employee's fault. Basically, the employee just didn't punch in or punch out. Now, as I entered it, I saved it. System recorded that entry as my first audit trail line. Then I went back in there and did some changes. I then changed the job from my main office to Alamo Cafe, and I actually probably changed the custodian and then kind of tweaked it back so it looks like it's a change, but it really didn't change it there. And then I left everything else alone, but then it tells me that I changed the job and task. Then the next line, I went and changed the task again. And then the next line, I changed the rate type. You know that I changed the rate type here. So anytime you make any changes on the employee's time card, that audit trail is recorded. So keep in mind, it's very important that we get the information right for the employee, but the more tinkering we do with the employee's time card, even if it's as simple as changing the job all the time, it can lend a lot of, I'm not going to say red flags, but it lends to a lot of extra staring eyes from our corporate audit team, because now we're wondering, why are we doing all these changes? What are we manipulating here? Why are we doing this? Why can't the employee get it right the first time? Why can't they punch in and punch out to the right job? So that is the audit trail and kind of the functionality behind that. The next piece of our time card processes is our time allocations. Now, time allocations are essentially no more than taking a punch and then redistributing that time, or simply moving that time to the appropriate job or jobs. Typically it's a job level, but we can also keep in mind that we can actually allocate time down to a variety of different levels. We can allocate time to a task, to a work order, specific rate type. So we got different levels that we can actually allocate time to. So allocation of time is nothing more than the process of moving or allocating time to the correct job, and it's basically an essential component of our business. Now, allocations ensure that we properly charge back the labor against a certain labor budget. So we have a labor budget that all of our jobs have labor budgets, and from that we want to make sure that we keep an accurate amount or accurate tracking of that particular labor. So actuals versus budget becomes very critical in our business. And we also want to ensure that we bill back the customer when needed. If we're not allocating our time correctly, when it comes time for our billing department to go in there and look and see what needs to be billed back, if a certain tasks are not allocated properly, we risk the chance of not billing back our time and labor for that particular job we perform. Hence, then obviously we lose money. So it's a critical part of our business that we go in there and do our allocations. Now, allocations can occur one of three approved ways. Two of the ways I'm going to talk about are directly from the time card module, and those are the split time card method. And that allows you to go in there and create an allocation by manually splitting of a time card based on a job, rate type, task, and/or work order. So any of the four methods are available. The other way, it looks very similar to the split time card. However, add allocation is the second method, and that is the allocation of time based on a task or work order only. So if you go in there to do the add allocation functionality, you cannot go in there and allocate by job, and you cannot allocate by the rate type. You can only do it by task or work order only. I'm going to show you that screenshots here momentarily on that method. The last one is the auto split, and I spoke about it during last week's webinar, and you can actually handle that one from the employee profile to set that one up. But the first two are really manual processes, and I hate the word manual because I don't want you to think it's a manual punch by no means. You're just going in there and essentially in both the split time card and the allocation methods, you're just taking the existing time the employee worked and just redistributing it to the correct job. So maybe the employee punched into the wrong job, maybe the employee worked the wrong task, whatever it may be. We can just go in there and move that time to the appropriate job task, rate type, or work order, just depending on which of the two methods we use. An auto split, like I mentioned, is a automatically generated process that comes off the employee profile that kind of goes off of a pseudo schedule for that employee. So this employee is working 3 jobs on a Monday, and typically works those 3 jobs on a Monday. We can have the system automatically go in there and allocate their time via a percentage across those 3 jobs that employee works. So the first one real quick would be the manually splitting of time cards. And just a refresher for those that already do this, and many of you already do this, this is a function that we actually stress that everybody goes and does this method. Instead of going in there and messing with the employee's time, instead of deleting the employee's time, re-entering it manually, creating all these anomalies that are going to be bad for your ePay compliance scoring, manual splitting of time cards is the way to go. So for example, let's say an employee works a full day and doesn't remember to punch into all the 2, 3, 4, 5 different jobs that he or she works. In this case, manually splitting a time card is a process where you would actually go in there, take that total time the employee worked, and reallocate it amongst multiple jobs as needed. So if this employee worked 8 hours, I could say, all right, I want 4 hours of this employee's time to go to job A, I want 2 hours to go to job B, and the remaining 2 hours to go to job C. You do it all for one step. At no point did you alter or edit the employee's in or out punch. It's perfectly valid, it's perfectly legal. You are not going to get penalized on your ePay compliance scores or metrics, as the original punches are not changed because you are not making any changes to the employee's in or out punches, but rather only the total time worked. And that is the key here. The compliance scores are predicated on the fact that a lot of our users make changes to the in or out punch. We're not making those changes here. We're just making a change to the total time worked. This is only going to be worked on straight hours. So if the employee worked 4.25 hours, then you have to reallocate 4.25 hours. Keep that in mind. It has to be whatever they work has to be reallocated. It isn't the employee's responsibility to always punch in and punch out, but the editor, submitter, approver can then take the total time and split it out as needed. So as I mentioned, you can take total time worked. In my example here, it's 4 hours. I can split out 1 hour, 1 hour, and 2 hours if need be. So that's kind of the manual splitting of the time card. And the way that works, same way, you go to that particular time card line. And for example, on this one, I have 13 and a half hours currently selected for Eric Nunez, who actually works my job over at 6620 Main Street in Houston, Texas. And then from there, I want to take his 13 and a half hour day and actually split it up amongst other jobs he actually worked that day. Now, for whatever reason, Eric didn't punch into those other jobs, but we need to actually take care of it now in the back end because we need to make sure that the employees, this employee gets paid correctly. So to that note, I go to that edit time card line. I click on the little black arrow. I then pull up, like I did earlier. I saw view audit on the list. This time I'm going to pick the first item on the list, and it's called split time card. And when I click on split time card, I then now have the ability to now take the total time that he worked, which is 13, to be exact, 13.29 hours. The other screen showed 13 hours and 29 minutes, I'm sorry. The other screen showed 13 hours and 30 minutes because he actually got the rounding rule came into play a little bit. So rounded would be 13 hours and 30 minutes. But since splitting time card is based on those straight hours, we need to now reallocate those 13 hours and 29 minutes. So the top half of the screen here is going to show you the before picture, what the split will look before. So when you go in there, it shows you that he worked at one job, he worked at one task, and he worked all of it for 13 hours and 29 minutes, all on regular rate type. What I can then do is go to the bottom of the screen, take it down to the bottom here, and see I can break out a variety of different ways. For example, now I actually took his total time that was on one job and broke it out into 4 jobs, all at the same task. Keep it simple here. And then you'll see I have 5 hours, 3 hours, another 3 hours to job C, and then the remaining 2 hours, 29 minutes all go to job D. Now, the way this would work, and the question always comes up here is, you know what, I split out the time, it looks good. What about the lunches? Does he have an automatic lunch deduction come out? Well, in this particular case, if this employee has a 1 hour lunch deduction, it's automatically going to be coming out of this particular setup. What's going to happen is wherever the actual threshold of that lunch hits is where the actual time is going to be deducted. If I tell the system that after 6 hours of pay, he's going to get a 30-minute lunch, the system will go through here and say, all right, well, I have 5 hours. All 5 hours is good. It's all going to go to that one job. Then I have 3 hours, and now I'm at the 8 hour mark. So wait a minute. The rule says after 6 hours, take out 30 minutes. So what's going to actually happen is that DHL Express job is where the lunch is going to hit when this time gets hit over in the timesheet view. So when you go back to the timesheet view, Timecard is going to show 13 hours, 29 minutes here, all broken out, 5 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours, and 2 hours, and 29 minutes. However, the timesheet view, is going to show 5 hours to 6620 Main Street, 2.5 hours to DHL Express with a 30-minute lunch in there, and then 3 hours to the Technology Force job, and 2 hours, 29 minutes to the City West job. So from there, you can kind of tell that the lunch rule is still going to run as it would, but it's going to go and be factored in at that particular threshold. Now, when you're actually allocating time, there is no rule that says you have to allocate the time in the order that the employee worked this time. So maybe the employee actually worked Main Street for 5 hours first, and he went to City West second, then he went to Technology Force third, and then actually went to DHL Express fourth. Now, whichever way you enter it in the system here, all right, it choose to actually split it out, is the order the system is going to take into consideration for lunch deductions. So keep in mind that it's going to go in that particular order. If DHL Express happens to be the fourth job you work that day, just keep in mind if I enter it in this order, the system is going to break it out just like this and actually create all of the lunch on that particular job potentially, just depending on what the rule setup is, etc. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind as a option that could occur. The next functionality is called Add Allocation. Now, Add Allocation is in the same spot, and I'm going to go back a couple screens here because I just noticed I left a screenshot out for you. Let's go back right here. So one of the screens I'll just mention right here, if you look here, when you go to the manually split a time card, one thing to keep in mind is you do see split time card at the very top of this list on number 2. Now, the other option you see on the same menu is Add Allocation. Now, Add Allocation and split time card here momentarily when you see Add Allocation, it looks very similar. They look very similar to one another. The major difference is what exactly you can allocate to. Now, as I mentioned with split time card a while ago, split time card allows you to go in there and allocate time to any of these areas. You can change the job, you can change the task, you can change the work order, you can even change the rate type. So from a perspective of a Blueforce user and making edits to time, splitting the time card is the best route to take. Now, Add Allocation is typically given to the employees. So employees who have access to go in there via, for example, MobilePunch or even WebPunch. And MobilePunch I bring up because there are some upgrades or updates to MobilePunch that will allow the employee to allocate time if need be from their mobile device. And that's something that's coming up here in the next couple of weeks. But right now, this allocation screen looks very similar to those that use WebPunch. And in those cases, the employee who actually logs in the system, or maybe you Blueforce users need to allocate your own time, you can actually log into Blueforce if need be and do that as well. But in either case, when you go to Add Allocation, you get the similar window. It looks very similar to what you already saw on the split time card, with the exception of rate type and the job. The rate type is not existent, and the job is uneditable. So you can only change the task, and you can only change the work order. But it works the same way. You take the total hours from the employees punch in and punch out. In this example, it's 8.5 hours. And from those 8.5 hours, you now have the ability to go in there and just redistribute, or as I mentioned, reallocate that 8.5 hours amongst multiple jobs. So essentially what's going to happen is you're going to take the different hours, 8.5 in this case, and I can break it up however way, shape, form as I like. But like I mentioned, once again, unlike the manual split function that we talked about a little while ago, the split time card, you cannot change the job and you cannot change the rate type. So everything here will be going to regular pay. You can then adjust the task and work order as needed. Now, Add Allocation, as I mentioned, is something that's kind of driven for the employee's perspective of making edits. And this is because we don't want them changing the rate types, and we definitely don't want them changing jobs unless it's been approved by somebody. So that's why only task and work order are the only options available from Add Allocation. Now, one thing will mention, I don't have a screenshot, and I'm not going to log into Blueforce for this piece, but just to know that when you go into Blueforce, you have in the time card view, you do have an option at the very top of the screen, kind of to adjust your view. And one of those views is to view punches with allocation. So if you actually choose to view punches with allocation, when you go this method of doing the add allocation route, you can actually see your initial time card line with the next subsequent lines underneath that's showing you the allocation broken out. It's not creating new lines for you, it's just showing you the detail behind that time allocation all on that time card screen. And I believe some of us, some of the team is on the call today from our HP sites do use that view and use this add allocation piece quite frequently. And the last method I'll just quickly mention, and I won't go through any more than this particular slide, is the auto split. Now, just to note that I kind of showed you that last week. The auto split function, once again, allows you to take that total time an employee works and automatically split it amongst the multiple jobs. So what you're telling the system here is that this employee always works 2 hours at job A, always works 2 hours on job B, and always works 1 hour at job C on Mondays. So the system would take the total time the employee works based on percentages, not the actual hours. So if I'm actually, thinking that out of a 5-hour workday, in that my example, that employee works 2 hours on job A, what I would do is go in the system and actually set that up as a percentage of the total time or total day that is expected to be worked. So in that case, I'd put 40% on job A, 40% on job B, and that last remaining hour would be 20% on job C. In that case, at the end of the shift, if the employee works more than 5 hours, the system is still going to be able to split that time accordingly because it's based on percentage of the total workday. So for that particular example, if you work 5.5 hours, we told the system to take 40% of that 5.5 hours, put it job A, 40% of that 5.5 hours go to job B, and then the remaining 20% of that 5.5 hours go to job C. So the system always is able to split out automatically based on those percentages. So examples here shows me a 4-hour example where I have 25%, 25%, and 50% of my split. And once again, this is something that's automatically set up on the employee profile. Any editor, submitter, or approver on this phone call can go in there and set that up. And once again, it's automatic. The system automatically does it for you. There's nothing more you have to do once you have it active. The only time you would intervene after you set it up is if that employee's job setup changed or the percentage has changed. But that's, once again, that's a quick review of an auto split. I kind of went through a little bit more detail. I think I had 6-7 slides with that last week's session, so I won't inundate you with that again this week. But if you have any more questions about auto split, I urge you to go and see last week's webinar if you didn't have a chance to attend on that session. Now, my favorite topic, the last topic, is mass load PTO. And the reason it's my favorite topic is because it's actually a functionality that many of you on this phone call are going to benefit from if you're not using it now. This gives you the ability to load PTO-related rate types to your employees' time sheets en masse, or time cards and time sheets en masse. What I mean by that is on certain given holidays, you may have a whole staff of, let's say, 20 employees who do not work that particular holiday. For example, Memorial Day is coming up. And on Memorial Day, we're going to say that this building is closed, but the employees are still eligible for holiday pay. So the options you have of entering holiday pay is to go one by one to each timesheet, employee by employee, add a line, type in 8 hours, add a line, type in 8 hours, add a line, type 8 hours, etc. It can be very mundane and just tedious by doing that consistently. The mass upload PTO functionality allows you to take that same scenario and upload it en masse to all those employees in one essential click of a button. So that's why I like it. It's my favorite because there's a lot of things you can do with that real quick. It's a time saver. So one line, it's going to be used by mass load PTO. It's going to be used for non-worked hours. So essentially, you can't do non-worked hours. It's going to be non-work scenarios. So any PTO-related scenarios where it's non-worked allows for holiday and any other PTO rate type to be uploaded en masse by job. And the PTO rate type that you can use vary by job. It's based on the pay group that that job is associated to, or those employees are associated to. So that is what actually drives that. So if you have rate types that are not deemed as holiday or PTO, related rate types, you will not be able to use those for this functionality. Can be used in advance of the holiday, meaning that right now, we're in April, early April, but we know that we have some holidays coming up. Why wait until after the holiday to take care of this when I know, in fact, that these 20 employees are going to be due that particular holiday pay? I can actually do it now if I wanted to. I think right now it's probably a little too soon to do it for Memorial Day because may have turnover, you may have some scenarios that come up. But don't wait till after the fact to do this. Do it ahead of time and be done with it. Now, it's only going to be available to submitters that have pay rate access and all approvers on this phone call. So just keep that in mind. Pay rate access with the submitters and all approvers that are on this call. Now, the way this works is from the Timecards module, you have a link on the far left-hand side of the screen, and the link is about halfway down and it says Mass Upload PTO. Now, when you click on that particular link, depending on what jobs you currently have selected, like for example, I have these jobs currently selected on my list. If I go in there and click on Mass Upload PTO, I'm only going to be able to work with the jobs that I have available currently selected. So that's one of the main criteria before you get started with this, is you already have one job or multiple jobs that you may want to do Mass Upload PTO for. Once again, you have to have them selected in order to work with them. Now, once you go in there, the first screen you'll come up to is really a template that'll be available for you to now tell the system what exactly you want to mass upload. So first thing is the job field. You're going to pick the job that you want to select to do the mass upload for. Now, it is important you pick the right job because you can't say, I want 20 employees going to a job that the employees typically don't work. Now, the way this works, the system's going to validate that the employees actually have this job under their working job. So it isn't crucial that you pick the right job when you do the mass upload. And obviously, from budgeting standpoint, if this job is not budgeted to take on any holiday pay or any non-worked PTO-related rate types, then please do not set up an upload for that particular job. 2, rate type. Rate type. What is the rate type that is involved here? In this case, it's holiday non-work. These employees did not work the holiday, but they are entitled to holiday. We're going to use holiday non-worked. 3rd is the date. What is the date of this holiday? I went ahead and chose Memorial Day, May 29th, 2017 as my date. And then how many hours are they due? Now, since we're doing that mass upload, we do not have to put in an in or out punch. All we're telling the system is how many hours are these employees due. Now, when I click on Populate PTO Template, the system is going to actually update my view that's down here at the bottom of the screen. In this particular grid here, I'm scratching all over it because you may have data that's not currently valid. Now, these are all test employees and not any valid rates or anything down here. But essentially what's happening is when I click on Populate PTO Template, the system then takes the information from the top and applies it to any employee that is eligible to work at this particular job. Now, keep in mind, all we're telling the system is right now is to automatically drop my information from here into the key fields on the actual grid. We have not paid the employee. We have not set up any time cards or time sheets for this employee. All we're doing is kind of fine-tuning our request. Now, from there, the employees that work this particular job are also going to be listed down here in this particular column under employee. So at this point, you have the ability now of telling the system which employees do you want to use, or more so, which employees do you want to select to receive this mass uploaded PTO. So at this point, I then go in there and click on the left-hand side under Select All. I choose the employees that I want to actually provide this PTO to in mass. Now, once again, we're only doing it for 1 day. It's only going to be for 529. And if we needed to do multiple days, then we'd come back into the step, repeat the step a couple of times. So first thing here, we're going to pick the employees that are going to get this 8 hours of holiday non-work on May the 29th. If I want to select them all, then click on the little Select All at the very top of the screen. That'll save me some time, or individually select as needed. You'll also see their rates pop in here. So these are the actual pay rates that they'll be earning this particular hours against. At this point, once I've done all that, the last thing for me to do is then click on Upload PTO at the very bottom of the screen. Now, the employees that are currently checked off will then automatically get uploaded. And before they get uploaded, you'll see a little green circle appear on the left-hand side of that particular check line. So for example, I'm going to draw in a little circle here. You'll see little greens that pop up in here. Any greens you see that pop up in here are saying that your records have been saved and they are now available for you to view it via the timesheet view for these employees. So Mass Upload PTO just gives you the opportunity to take non-worked, holiday-related, personal, sick, anything like that that needs to be done in mass. You can actually do that in one keystroke by coming here and clicking on Upload PTO once you set up the grid. So at that point, that employee's time is visible in timesheet. You no longer have to worry about it because it's already been uploaded. So at that point, when that week comes up, when that particular day comes in, you'll rest a little easier because now the system automatically has that time for you. The question always comes up is, can we set this up to automatically appear in the system? Unfortunately, no. This is why it's kind of a manual process. You have to do it yourself. The system here is only, a lot of the things you do in Blueforce is based on work time. Basically, employees punched in, employee punched out, and then we tell the system to do something with that time. Anytime an employee does not record a punch in the system requires some manual intervention towards us. And I call it manual intervention, but those non-work scenarios do not count against you on the ePay compliance dashboard or those metric scores. So you don't have to worry about that. We need you to go in here and actually record those holidays, those sick days, those personals, those bereavements, etc. Those PTO related days. So just want to say once again, support, I say this all the time, but help desk ticket, help desk ticket, help desk ticket. That's enough. I won't talk any more about that for this screen. But I do want to say thank you for joining us today on our webinar. Next week, which is the week of April 10th, so on the 11th and 13th, our topic is kind of be garnered off of those surveys that I talked about at the very beginning of the call as well. We're going to talk about reports and how to export data out of the system. So we're going to go away a little bit from the actual working in Blueforce with data and actually focus on how to get a good report out of the system and how to export some of the maybe timesheet view data that's available out there. So until next week, I say thank you again. Have your fellow team members join us for Thursday's session, same session here again. If not, we'll talk to you again next week on Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. Central. Until then, have a great rest of your work week.